All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the February 23rd on the Agent Sandbox meeting. I'm your host today, Janet. And then we have a few announcements today. And then first, let me share the meeting notes to the chat so that people can follow along. And we have a few announcements today. The first one is that the GitHub repo just reached 1,000 stars. And we're really excited, and thanks for everyone for paying attention to the repo and also contributing. And then the second announcement is that we just released the Python SDK through PyPy. So you can now do pip install Kubernetes Agent Sandbox to install the Python SDK. And then we also renamed the library, the package, so that it's more consistent with what's with its name in the PyPy. Then we have a few discussion, and then finally there will be open topic. And so here's a link to the open PRs. We'll have a few open PRs, but we can discuss those later. And the first discussion is about a UX change. So there's a proposal for changing the, let me share this, changing the Agent Sandbox main controller from a stateful set into a deployment, and then enable the leader election for HA. So this will not change a lot to the current controller code. The main difference will be when you upgrade Agent Sandbox to the newer version. With this change, you'll have to remove the original stateful set. So there's a migration guide included in this PR. So I'm planning to accept this PR. And if you have questions or concerns, feel free to look at the PR and then speak up. And then there's another potential user experience change. So the proposal, let me share this. The proposal is trying to simplify the way that Wormpool creates warm resources. So to recap, a Wormpool is a CR for creating resource that you wanted to exist in the cluster before it's ready to be used. And the main use case is for lower latency for the sandbox. And then today, the Wormpool creates a pod directly. And then this proposal is about how about we change it to the Wormpool creates sandbox directly. And then that comes with additional questions about if it doesn't just create pods only, then what about other resources that might come with the sandbox? For example, we create services with the sandbox along with the pod, and then we're also adding there's also another PR for adding support for creating PVCs with the sandbox pod. Do we warm those resources as well? So those kind of design decisions need to be taken into consideration before we can accept this. So if you have questions, feel free to raise right now or take a look at the PR and then see if you have comments. And before I move on, does anyone have thoughts about either of these items that I just mentioned? So if not, we can go to the next item, which is the wish list from the community. So I was wondering if anyone who's using or integrating with Agent Sandbox, is there any features that they want but they haven't seen or seen either on the roadmap or hasn't been implemented yet? And feel free to jump in.
Hey, this is Jens. I work for Red Hat.
I
So first of all, hi. So we plan to contribute to Agent Sandbox, our team. And one request we've had from uh, was for a community operator, an operator hub. And I wanted to like get a feeling. I mean, we'll create an issue or create a PR, but just want to get a feeling from the community if that's something that was discussed earlier, if that's on someone else's wish list. Is that desire from anyone else?
Can you go into a bit more detail?
So, operatorhub.io, that's basically where we would contribute a bundle, an operator bundle, and maintain that so that a user could install it via OLM into their cluster. And it would basically be Agent Sandbox as is.
So you're talking about package the Agent Sandbox controller into an
Yeah.
operator for easier upgrade, installation and
Yeah,
upgrade.
exactly. Yeah. So just the life cycle management of the as an operator. And so it's on operatorhub.io. That's where you find a lot of uh, operators already. And those are all community versions, of course. But you can also install them on any Kubernetes cluster, of course, but also on an OpenShift cluster. And that's where like our internal requests came from.
Yeah, sounds good. And if you have time, please feel free to file a feature request.
Yeah.
Do you think the
Yeah.
operator will live on the operator repo, or would it live in the Agent Sandbox repo?
So the bundle itself, what you need to deploy it as an operator, would be just a directory in the operator hub GitHub repository. But it would only be basically the metadata that lives there. The entire code, everything else will be built from the Agent Sandbox repositories.
Sounds good.
We
Thanks
can
for
create an
the,
issue and give an example, and then we can discuss in a GitHub issue.
yeah, good. And any other feedback or thoughts about Agent Sandbox? Or if you want to share how you're using Agent Sandbox or maybe you have questions about the project itself, feel free to raise it.
I would love to hear if anybody has some usage examples. That's a great idea. Love to hear it.
Well, I saw from the repo that there are a few interesting examples, either on already merged or in flight. Um, so for example, here's a interesting one that there is in LangChain Deep Agent integration with Agent Sandbox. And I wonder, I see other um, interesting examples like this one. I wonder if anyone have thoughts or ideas about um, the use of agent sandbox in the cluster. And then one thing where I'm trying to work on in the community is that we try to figure out what's the right integration for something like the snapshot, or you can say checkpoint restore integration. So I think one of the use case is that you can pause or suspend a agent and then an agent sandbox and then resume it later when you need to use it. And then the benefit is that it can you can get a faster restore of the you can restore back to the state you original have. But there's also I noticed that some applications they have their own uh, restore implemented, and then the state is just saved in the um, PVC. So I wonder if um, maybe folks have some thoughts about how they want or what they see the agent sandbox in, like state checkpointing, restoring, how that looks like in the maybe in the field or how it's being used.
It's an interesting topic, Janet. Down in the container runtime, we already have a Sandbox API, and we need to add the additional checkpointing of sandboxes for pod sandboxes, but we're not there yet. It's more of a work in progress kind of effort. It seems to me that there's a relationship between the agent sandbox instances and an actual, runtime instance of a sandbox. Um, Certainly, Kata Containers is using the new Sandbox API. So just a heads up, there's some other lower level integration efforts that probably need to happen to get the additional things like checkpoint and restore to work. For example, pod doesn't currently have a paused state or a restored state, or has it split up the run of a pod into a create followed by a start action. I think you need those additional states and the additional actions in the container runtime interface in order to integrate with the existing sandbox tools.
Well, thanks for sharing, Mike. So we still have some more time. Would you like to maybe spend some more time to talk about how the Sandbox API work in Container D? Maybe do you want to share the screen? I can also give you permission to share.
Next time, I didn't bring the details. I could bring up the interface real quick, but yeah. Basically, in Container D, we have a new core service for sandboxes. That was written so that we could have other types of pod sandboxes, where a VM, for example, is used for isolation in Kata containers. The Kata containers version 4 release actually uses that API when it goes out. Okay, and we're working with the OpenShift team to try to get them to also support this API. The Sandbox API operates at the shim layer, if you're familiar with that. So tools like gvisor and such could actually write to the Sandbox API and create a whole instance there. Okay. Otherwise, I'm trying to also figure out what exactly, is the instance of a sandbox inside of one of these new agent controller sandboxes or agent sandbox controllers.
Yeah, so the agent sandbox controller we have today, it basically delegates all the details of those container runtime level isolation to the underlying controller runtime. And the agent sandbox controller creates pods as a like
I
first
got it.
layer of isolation. And
Okay,
then
so
so that
so it's
yeah,
similar to the kubelet, but not for the pod sandbox, literally for a new type of sandbox. So just a
right.
sort of a minor heads up here, what we've had to do inside of Container D is to map the runtime handler that's selected when you do a pod to both new sandbox types and to explain what type of sandbox that new sandbox handler is. For example, is it a CRI pod sandbox handler supporting all those, the existing features that are required by the Kubernetes stack? Yeah, it's interesting. You're still going to want the sidecars. I don't think you're going to want to write, a controller from scratch without that adds its own pods. I think you're going to want to go through the kubelet for that action. But this additional label that would work for upfront, and then we'll want to make a real API, right? Not just using annotation.
So you mentioned would you are you saying that the sandbox API in the container D is it already merged and
It is.
adopted?
It is. There's a core sandbox service that's already merged and it's already being imported by Kata. But we're talking about moving that into a new layer, a new shim instance, a V3 of the shim or V4 that will actually have the additional sandbox APIs. Today, the shims that we support, all these other runtime handlers like NVIDIA, what those shims are is an instance, a daemon instance that hosts the pod, right? Which is all the containers in the pod, as well as the additional metadata and all the instance data that's required for the VM handler or the pod sandbox handler. Those things include network setup, the image pulls, that sort of stuff, right? And a lot more. There's a lot of stuff that we support inside of a pod sandbox. Okay. But yeah, so that's our intent. And we'll be talking about that at a community summit this at the end of the week for Container D, and there's going to be a lot of people there that are interested in sandboxes as well, and that'll be one of the major topics that we're going to cover. How we can start making this more available, the Sandbox API.
Yeah, sounds good.
It's
Thanks for sharing.
it's a common term. It might,
Yeah. Yeah, so in our use case, the we call it agent sandbox is because sandbox is just too general, and then we find that agent use case is the probably one of the most common one right now.
yeah, it's a good way to add a CDRD to it and make it all fit within the existing infrastructure that we have. It makes good sense. We ran into a similar problem, Janet, about 10 years ago when we came up with is this a pod or a sandbox API? The answer was we'll just call it pod sandbox for now.
Yeah,
It was fun. It was Tim's idea
it's
talking.
thanks for sharing. So maybe if you're interested, we can follow up with maybe a presentation for
Sure,
how this
especially
work
after
and how we can integrate that with agent
it,
sandbox.
exactly. Yeah, I'm hoping that on the OpenShift side, the cryo team agrees that we're going to add additional sandboxing features. Down the road, we'd like to see an OCI specification for such things. That would be of interest to me as well. We'll see, right? Basically we need to add an OCI sandbox manifest, right? And that doesn't currently, it's not defined anywhere except in the pod specification. And I guess maybe you're going to be adding to that. So it would be nice if we standardized this API rather than,
Right.
so that if I write, a Kata containers shim or, Sandbox shim, then it should run on both types of container runtimes, both OpenShift and Containerd stacks. Any questions? Sorry, I hate to interrupt, take over your meeting here.
Yeah, no problem.
Zixon?
Hi, this is Zishin from Philo. We're an AI agent startup mainly for biomedical and scientific workflows. And just have a follow-up question around around snapshot. I haven't take too much look into the PR, but are we planning to support like file system based snapshotting or more like memory based snapshotting? For just there's some subtleties within like comparing to memory and then the file system snapshotting. The If we use the file system snapshotting, like when we do the restore, we have to spin up the servers, we have to run some processing, and then restore from the file system. But if we run like memory snapshotting, we could technically save the entire code namespace to the memory, and then when we do the restore, it will be have like a lot less frictions comparing to the file system snapshotting. I'm just curious on like what's the current implementation
It,
for
sure.
snapshot.
The idea is that you would be able to take a container instance, okay? We haven't done pods yet, but for the container instance, you would use the CRY-U functionality that's already existed in Linux for a considerable amount of time, and it's been integrated with the runtimes. And what that'll do is make a new image on disk that you can push up to a registry and you can reload and actually restore that container. The problem's going to be in the details of being able to convince the pod implementation inside of the kubelet that this is a new pod spec or a modification to the A pod, restoring that container, and you should accept that. Okay.
I
The
see.
devil will be in the details. And the same thing, and yes, we've discussed the file system, the shared resources, checkpoint also will need to be checkpointed, but right now it's memory.
Mhm. Okay, sounds good.
And
Thank you.
and the snapshot, right, for the image. It has to be built on top of, right?
Mhm. Great. Thank
Sure.
Thanks for sharing. And then for the snapshot integration with Agent Sandbox, we also have an open PR in the repo today. For that, so the PR right now tries to propose a API field for integrating with different types of snapshotting solution. But so one potential integration backend is the GKE snapshot controller. Then we also have the checkpoint restore API being discussed in the upstream. So there's some ongoing thoughts about how we make sure that it's extensible for all types of different backend, and also make sure that it will be aligning with the upstream standard once it's finalized. So that's still on TBD and still in progress, and we're still working on that.
Yeah, the kept for checkpoint restore was paused, okay, until the next release. We got closer, but it's still not ready. and it was going to be isolated to just the CRI functionality extensions that were needed for making it work for pods as well. But it's been coming along for containers.
Yeah. And then let's see, there's a question from chat about this issue. I think we need to take a look at the issue.
Yeah, actually, I was having a look at it and I couldn't really find a link which was as such broken. But yeah, I mean, if anybody could reconfirm on it.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see what's broken. It's probably talking about the documentation.
Okay. If it persists, I'll be happy to take it up.
Yeah, sounds good. Take a look. And anything else from the folks? Any open topics or questions? It's fine if you just want to say hi. Oh, we have a hand.
Hey everyone, I am Dharmjit and I'm working with a startup. So we are building something similar for basically providing AI dev environments as a service. And for that, just a second. Yep, sorry. And for that, we are providing GPUs along with this dev environments, and we have a similar concept of agent sandbox. So I was just wondering if with agent sandbox also we can provide GPUs with DRA API. Is that possible today?
Because it just creates a pod, you can definitely use it with DRA and GPU.
Okay, okay. And is that like one of the use case that agent sandbox project is targeting? Or is it more about running AI agents?
So AI agents is one of the use case, and then we also have other use case like dev environment, like you mentioned. And so I think we have this in our homepage that basically besides the AI agents, there's also dev environment use case. And
Okay, thanks.
yeah, I think it's yeah, we put it under the motivation. These are the common use case that I see that we see that people could be benefit from this project, like dev environment, AI in your own time, running the notebooks, or just in some cases you need a stateful single pod service.
Okay,
So,
okay, got it. Thanks.
yeah, feel free to take a look and see. Maybe you have some feedback, or if you want to integrate this with your product, let us know. Or
Sure.
yeah. All right. So we are at time. Thanks everyone for coming, and then please feel free to look at the PR or the repo itself, and then try to play with it. And if you have more questions, feel free to ping me on Slack, or you can just email us at the mailing list. And then if you have something you are interested in presenting, you can also put it in the meeting notes so that I know that you're interested in presenting something. All right. Thanks everyone for coming. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.